Nolan's parents heard the sheriff say there's no foul play at the beginning of the investigation, that is cause for concern, major concern. You haven't even investigated, but you're saying no foul play.
Tonight, newly released autopsy results are raising more questions about how Nolan Wells died.
He's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play. That is significant.
On the 10th of July, a body arrives in Washington, D.C. that has already been traveling for the better part of a week. It was pulled out of the Mississippi Sound 4 days earlier, after 2 days in the water, and the flight north was held up by weather on the Gulf Coast. Nobody's fault. A storm in July. But a body does not wait for a plane, and 4 days in that heat takes things with it that do not come back. The man waiting for it is Roger Mitchell. He ran the medical examiner's office for the nation's capital. He has thousands of autopsies behind him, and he has testified in cases this entire country watched unfold. He is the second pathologist to examine this body. The first examination happened 3 days ago at a state laboratory on the Mississippi coast, and it was thorough enough that the family could have accepted it and stopped there. They did not stop there. They put their son on a plane and sent him to a doctor with no connection to any agency in the state of Mississippi, because they had decided they were not going to spend the rest of their lives wondering. So Mitchell begins, and almost immediately, he begins somewhere the first examination did not go. He opens the tissue at the back of the neck and the skull, and there is a red area there, 12 inches across and 8 inches down, sitting under the skin at the base of a young man's head. He does not know what caused it. He writes that down in plain language, without softening it and without guessing. Cause unknown. Nobody has explained it since. And he adds one line about it that almost none of the coverage picked up, which is that it could not have been observed during the first examination, because during the first examination, that area was never opened at all. Then he goes looking for the structures of the neck itself. They are not there. They were retained by the state during the first autopsy, which is ordinary, and which his own report describes as common practice, routine, the kind of decision made without anyone pausing over it. But it means the one thing you would need to find an injury to that neck, or to rule one out, is 800 miles away in an office that has released nothing, and the decision to release it does not belong to that office either. That is not an accusation, it is an arrangement. 9 days later, he signs the report. Cause of death, undetermined. Manner of death, undetermined. The young man on that table was 18 years old. His name was Nolan Xavier Wells, and 2 days before this report was read aloud in a room in Chicago, his family buried him in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. A note before we begin. This episode concerns the unexplained death of a real 18-year-old and the forensic examinations that followed it. No graphic detail is described anywhere in it. Viewer discretion is advised. If this is your first time here, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. To everyone already here, thank you. 2 days before that report was read out in Chicago, at 9:20 on a Monday morning in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, the line outside Center Point Church had already grown past the doors and around the side of the building. Almost everybody in it was young. His old high school teammates had come as a group, and the family had asked people to wear black and blue, which are the Ocean Springs colors, so that is what the line looked like from the road. Near the entrance, somebody had set up a portrait of him in a black suit, surrounded by white roses and hydrangeas. Inside, 2 screens ran photographs while gospel music played, and the photographs went back further than most people in that room had known him. Football, basketball, baseball, a childhood measured out in seasons, family pictures, group shots, a few selfies, his birthday, his prom, his graduation the year before. He was the oldest of 6. Elmore, Ethan, Jalen, Jaden, Carly. His high school coach said the players on that team now had come up under him. and that those same players had spent the past 2 weeks looking after the youngest of his brothers, who is on that roster. He was a wide receiver, number 16, for the Southwest Mississippi Community College Bears, a rising sophomore on a football scholarship, studying general business, and he was days away from reporting back for training when he died. He also worked behind the camera at his high school, which is the sort of thing nobody thinks to mention until afterward. His mother stood up in front of all of it and told the people in that church what she wanted them to take away from her son. In a world that can feel dark, be like Nolan. Be the light. Love deeply. Welcome people. She had said something else about him a few days earlier that is harder to put on a poster, that he had a way of making people feel seen, that he could lift somebody's confidence with a few words and make them feel like they belonged somewhere. Hundreds of people stood. 48 hours later, his parents were sitting at a table 800 miles north, in Chicago, at the annual convention of the NAACP, in front of a room full of cameras, while their lawyer read out what the second examination had found. The cause of death was listed as undetermined. The manner of death was listed as undetermined. Pending investigation, which everybody in that room understood to mean not yet. Reports take time. Laboratories take time. Toxicology in particular takes weeks, and nobody had it. Christine Wansley sat through all of it, and when she finally spoke, she did not talk about the report at all. She said that losing a child breaks your heart, that it is a pain you cannot measure, that it was worse because of who he was and how much of it he brought into a room. And then she said the thing every unanswered case comes down to in the end, and she said it more plainly than anything else anybody has said about this case since the 4th of July. The only question we have, she said, is what happened to our son. 2 weeks before Chicago, on a Sunday morning, a United States park ranger found him in the water off the northwest tip of Horn Island. He had been missing since the afternoon of the 4th of July. For more than 40 hours, the Coast Guard had been searching, along with the National Park Service, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, and volunteers who came out on their own boats across water that on a holiday weekend is one of the busiest stretches on that coast. His identity was confirmed through dental records, which brings us to a man who has been almost entirely absent from the way this case has been argued online. The Jackson County coroner is Bruce Lind Jr. He could have handled this locally. Coroners do, all the time, particularly with a young man recovered from open water on a 4th of July weekend, which is a set of facts that writes its own conclusion if you let it. He did not let it. He sent the case to the state medical examiner's office and asked for a full examination, and he was specific about why. The condition of the body, the uncertainty of the circumstances. He said he wanted to know whether there was trauma. He said he wanted to know whether there was foul play. Hold on to that, because it complicates the version of this story that a lot of people online had already settled on within about a day. The official who saw Nolan first is the reason there was a state examination at all. It took place on the 7th of July at the state laboratory on the coast. And that should have been the end of it. One body, one examination, one report, one answer. Instead, his parents made a decision that most families never have to think about, and they made it fast. Christine and Elmore Wansley had their son flown out of Mississippi, not to a different county, out of the state entirely. It was paid for by an initiative funded by Colin Kaepernick, which exists to provide independent autopsies for people who die in the custody of law enforcement, corrections officers, or immigration officials. So on the 10th of July, 4 days after he was found, 6 days after he was last seen alive, and nearly a week after the state had finished its own work, Nolan Wells arrived in Washington, D.C. And before Roger Mitchell had made a single incision, part of what that examination could ever find had already been decided by things nobody in that building controlled. He began the way every second pathologist begins, with whatever was left to work with. Start with the water, because everything else follows from it. He was in the Mississippi Sound for 2 days in the first week of July, not in a controlled space, not in refrigeration. The Gulf in high summer is not a preserving environment. It is the opposite of one. By the time he reached Washington, time and water had taken things that could not be recovered. Mitchell wrote that down plainly, and he wrote down what it does. It obscures injuries. It complicates toxicology. It takes things away without leaving a note about what it took. That is where his examination started, not with a body minus 4 days. He could not establish when Nolan died. In his report, the date of death is listed as unknown. A young man went missing on the afternoon of the 4th and was found on the morning of the 6th, and the second pathologist to examine him could not narrow the gap between those 2 points by a single hour. He had no toxicology either. The original results had not come back by the time he wrote, so the standard question, whether anything in Nolan's system contributed to what happened, was one he could not reach at all. And here is what he did not find, which matters just as much as what he did. No apparent lacerations, no fractures, no deep tissue injuries. The Jackson County coroner had said something similar in the first days after the recovery. There were no immediate, visible signs of injury on Nolan Wells. So whatever happened on that island, on the surface of him, it left nothing anybody could point to and name, which is what makes the red area at the back of his head so difficult to sit with. 12 inches across, 8 inches down, under the skin, where nothing on the surface showed. Cause unknown, in the words of the man who found it, and invisible to the examination that came first, because that area was never opened. That is not a claim that anybody did anything wrong. Pathologists make choices about what to open based on what a case appears to require, and a case that presents as a drowning does not automatically require that dissection. It is a statement about what one report contains and what the other one cannot. Then Mitchell did something else, and this is the part that changes the shape of the whole story. He listed the limitations on his own findings, and he ranked them. Most people assume the biggest problem was the neck tissue he never received. That is what the headlines were about. That is what was read out in Chicago. It was not the biggest problem, not according to him. The most significant limitation, in his own assessment, was that he could not directly observe the airway and the lungs for water, and he could not directly observe the stomach for its contents. Take a moment with what that actually means. There is one central question in any death in the water. Did the person drown? And the way that question gets answered, in every case like this one, is by looking for water where water should not be. In the airway, in the lungs, in the stomach. By the time the second examination happened, that question could no longer be asked of the body in front of him. Second on his list, not first, were the neck structures retained by the state during the initial autopsy. And he was careful about this in a way that matters. He wrote that retaining them is common forensic pathology practice. He did not suggest concealment. He did not suggest irregularity. He described a standard step, and then he described what it cost him. Third on the list was the toxicology he did not have. So take the three together, because that is how he presented them. He could not look for water in the lungs. He could not examine the interior of the neck. He had no toxicology. 3 of the things you would need to determine how an 18-year-old died in the water, and he had none of them. From what remained, he wrote what he could. He could not rule out injury to the neck as a contributor to, or a cause of, the death of Nolan Wells. He could not rule out that something other than an accident had played a part. His exact framing was that he could not rule out intervening non-accidental factors. He wrote that further investigation was needed to answer multiple lingering questions. The state has said one thing about all of this. On the day those findings were made public, the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office issued a statement. It was 3 sentences long, and it did not address a single specific finding. It said the autopsy had been performed in accordance with the standard procedures and protocols followed for all autopsies. It said the office would not be commenting on the independent examination. Standard procedures, standard protocols, followed for all autopsies. And taken on its own terms, that is a reasonable answer. Every office in the country works to a protocol. Nobody improvises an autopsy. But there is a way to test a sentence like that, and it does not involve speculating about this case at all. You look at what those standard procedures have produced before. 5 years ago, in Rankin County, Mississippi, a woman named Monica Lee watched sheriff's deputies arrest her son in a driveway in Braxton. His name was Damian Cameron. He was 29 years old. He had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and with schizophrenia. A neighbor had made a complaint, he had run, and the deputies had caught him. Witnesses said one deputy sat on his back while another knelt on him. His mother and his grandparents said he told them repeatedly that he could not breathe. There was no body camera footage. There was no dash camera footage. He was found unresponsive in the patrol car and pronounced dead at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. His body went to the state medical examiner's office. The chief medical examiner of Mississippi is Dr. Stacy Turner. She became interim chief in January of that year and took the role permanently that November. She is a board-certified forensic pathologist. Her autopsy on Damian Cameron documented internal bleeding in his neck. Mississippi Today reported that the pattern of that bleeding suggested he may have been pinned to the ground with a knee. She did not rule his death a homicide. She ruled the cause of death undetermined, and in her report she explained why. Due to a lack of access to information involving the circumstances of the death, the cause and the manner were best classified as undetermined. Undetermined. The same word that was read out in that room in Chicago, in front of Nolan's parents, 5 years later, and that everybody in that room heard as not yet. For the family of Damian Cameron, it did not mean not yet. A grand jury declined to indict the deputies. That is what the word can do. It is not always a blank space waiting to be filled in later. Sometimes it is the finding. And where a prosecutor is deciding whether to bring charges, undetermined is very often where a case stops moving. 2 years after that ruling, the New York Times and Mississippi Today asked 3 independent forensic pathologists to review what had happened to Damian Cameron. All 3 concluded his death should have been ruled a homicide. The only person to argue otherwise was the lawyer for the sheriff's department, who told the appeals judges the death appears to be an overdose. In May of this year, the Mississippi Court of Appeals revived the family's civil lawsuit, finding there were genuine issues of material fact about whether the deputy's actions had been reasonable. Now the other side of it, and it matters just as much. The state medical examiner's office is not simply the office that is slower or the office that says less. In Nolan's case, it may be the only party in a position to answer anything at all. It has the tissues retained during the first examination. It will have complete toxicology. It will have the microscopic findings, and unlike an independent pathologist working alone in another state, it has the full investigative file, scene findings, witness statements, emergency medical records, everything law enforcement has gathered. Roger Mitchell had a body 4 days after recovery, and no file at all. One more case. In September of last year, a 21-year-old student at Delta State University named DeMar Travion Reed, known to everyone as Trey, was found dead on his campus in Cleveland, Mississippi. The county coroner reported no signs of foul play. 2 days later, the state medical examiner's office determined the death was a suicide. His family disputes that finding. They retained Ben Crump. An independent autopsy was carried out by Dr. Matthias Okoye, funded by the same Kaepernick initiative that paid for Nolan's. 10 months later, those results have still not been made public. And here is the limit of what any of this proves. Of these 3 cases, Damian Cameron's is the only one where an independent review has directly contradicted the state. Trey Reed's independent findings have never been released. Nolan Wells's state findings have never been released. Nobody can tell you there is a pattern in the results, because in 2 of the 3, nobody outside those offices has seen the results. What you can see is how long families wait to find out. So when Christine and Elmore Wansley say they are waiting on the state's report, understand what they are waiting on and understand how it reaches them, because that turns out to be a story of its own. The state medical examiner's office completes the report and provides it to the Jackson County coroner. That is the process. But Bruce Lind has said the release of those results would have to come from the prosecutor's office. Not from him, not from the medical examiner, from the prosecutor. The district attorney for Jackson County is Angel Myers McElrath. She met with the family and walked them through the procedure. When Mississippi Today asked her office about the release of the findings, neither she nor a representative responded. So the report is completed in one office, held in a second, and released by a third. And a mother and a father in Ocean Springs are waiting on a piece of paper that has to move through all 3 before they are allowed to read what it says about their son. Meanwhile, the investigation itself continues, and by any measure, it is a serious one. The Jackson County Sheriff's Department says it has interviewed roughly 60 witnesses. The FBI is assisting with digital evidence. The 3 friends who took the boat out to Horn Island with Nolan have been interviewed in depth and have cooperated. Investigators have publicly asked anybody who was on that island on the 4th of July for original, unedited photographs and video. Nobody has been arrested, nobody has been charged, nobody has been named as a suspect by anyone. When the investigation is finished, the district attorney will take it to a grand jury, and a grand jury will decide whether there is any case to bring. Ben Crump has asked for 2 things, and they are narrower than the headlines around this case suggest. He wants the state medical examiner's office to give Dr. Mitchell its photographs and its observations of Nolan's body from closer to the time he was pulled out of the water. Mitchell saw him on day 4. The state saw him on day 1. Some of what was lost to the second examination still exists in the first one's records. And he wants Mitchell's findings included in the evidence that goes in front of that grand jury, not instead of the state's. Alongside it, Mitchell himself said the proper venue for interpreting the toxicology results, when they come, would be the grand jury. He also left a list, not a theory, a list of the questions he could not answer and believes somebody still can. How Nolan entered the water, whether there was any injury to his neck, whether there was bleeding in his brain, what was in his stomach. 4 questions from a former chief medical examiner, written down in a report, addressed to nobody in particular. On the day of the funeral, the Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy and announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and a conviction. Tyler Perry, who paid for the funeral, matched it. $100,000 offered toward a conviction in a case where nobody has been charged. 20 days after Nolan Wells was last seen on Horn Island, there is no cause of death. There is no manner of death. There is no released state finding. There is no arrest, no charge, and no suspect. There is a report from a former chief medical examiner of the nation's capital saying he could not rule out that something other than an accident contributed to the death of an 18-year-old. There is a 12 by 8-inch area at the back of a young man's neck and skull that nobody has been able to explain. And there is a family waiting on a document that 3 separate offices have to move before they are permitted to see it. They buried him 4 days ago. They still do not know why. There is going to be a great deal more said about this case in the coming weeks, and most of it will be said by people who learned his name 2 weeks ago. Now, one last thing about Nolan Wells, and then I will leave him alone. Go back to that church on the 20th of July, to his mother, standing in front of 600 people 4 days after the second autopsy was performed, and 2 days before anybody heard what it said. She told them something he had told his family, that he wanted 3 daughters one day, and that he had already chosen their names: Sophia, Charlotte, Olivia. He was 18 years old. He was studying business, playing football, and getting ready for his second season. And he had already worked out what he was going to call his children. 20 days later, nobody has been able to tell his parents how he died. His mother asked one thing of the people in that church, and it is the only instruction anybody in this story has given that all of us can actually follow. Share his stories, she said. Never stop saying his name. As long as we keep remembering him, his light keeps shining through us. The state's report is not finished. The toxicology is not back. The grand jury has not seen anything yet. This is not the end of the Nolan Wells case. It is the part where everyone finds out who is still paying attention. If you made it this far, subscribe. I am staying on this one until there is an answer, and there will be a follow-up the moment anything is released. And if you have not already, tell me in the comments who you think should decide when an autopsy report becomes public. The doctor who wrote it, the coroner, the prosecutor, or the family.